today I'm going to speak about urban planning in games. But before, a few words about myself. It's 2 years that I've been working at CD Projekt Red, and 10 years that I'm in game dev in general, work mostly on environments. Also, I have a master's degree in urban planning, although I never work as architect or urban planner. However, I keep studying urban planning because it's my biggest hobby and I'm really into this topic. So, why do we need urban planning? First of all, because urban setting is very common for many games. It can be real city or fictional one, like sci-fi, fantasy, futuristic, whatever. Still, it's an urban environment, and we have to know how to work with it. What's more, urban setting is common not only for big open world projects, but also for smaller games with maybe like linear gameplay. Still, if we have to create, let's say, just one or a few streets instead of entire city, we still have to understand what is the street and what kind of elements make your street actually recognized as a street. And it's not a trivial question. When we creating urban environment for games, we're not necessarily have to create it realistic. The goal is to make it believable. I really like to compare urban planning for games with anatomy for game characters. Because when we're creating a character, well, not we, but character artists, they not necessarily follow real human proportions, but they still have to understand human anatomy, and follow certain rules. And then, like, sometimes they simplify some things, sometimes they exaggerate, maybe add some additional parts, like, I don't know, horns, wings, whatever. So the same works with the city. We have to understand urban environment and then adjust it to our specific needs. And of course, we cannot just simply copy-paste real city from Google Maps, even in cases when we actually, creating like real existing city, because real proportions for cities will not work for our needs. Simple example, if we have a grocery store, let's say 15 minutes away walk from our home, we would consider it as super close and super convenient. And of course, it would be nice to have this short walk to this grocery store. But in game, if we have to go for 15 minutes just walking, we would consider this as super boring. So yeah, it will not work. And we have to remember that real cities were made for comfortable living, and game cities should be made for fun playing, and those are completely different tasks. And I will start with how not to do, because it's a very common mistake for many artists and designers, is that they perceive a city as a bunch of buildings randomly scattered on a surface. And at first glance, it might seem like that, but of course it is not. And I will show my idea on this really simple scheme. And if you look at this, you may notice that actually those two silhouettes, City1 and City2, they're almost identical. It's really hard to see any difference there. But one of those is actually a city, and another one is a bunch of randomly scattered buildings. And in a second, actually right now, you will understand what I mean. So I guess now you got my idea. So first one, the City1, is actually a city. I mean, of course, it's a very simplified one, but we immediately read the structure because we saw it like many times. And when it comes to City2, the second example, it's chaos. And I mean, of course, we can probably make a nice composition out of the cubes, but we still lack of structure. And city, it's always a structure. But let's see, let's have a look at those two examples. From the street view, so this is how we perceive cities as us, as person, and as a player in first and third person view games. So if we look at first example, the City1, again, obviously we have like lack of details, but even now we more or less understand that this is a street with buildings. And I would like to highlight it. We have zero information about this city, but we understand a lot about the space. And I say a lot because I literally put 10 cubes, and you already see a street. And when it comes to second example, it's really hard to say what's that. Like, it's definitely not a street because street is supposed to have certain direction and there is none. Maybe it's something like a backyard, but I would say it's too complicated for backyard, and it's really hard to imagine the shape of city block that would create this backyard. So long story short, it's really hard to recognize the space. It's really hard to say what's that. And here is the main idea. We probably can imitate the city without using urban planning. I mean, if we put all those cubes in nice composition, like, level design also could be quite playable. But if we use urban planning from very beginning, if we perceive a city as a structure, we would just, simplify our lives. Because, as you can see, if we use urban planning, we can create a distinctive and recognizable space from the very first step of production. So, to understand how to make a city, first we should know what the city is made of. But before, short disclaimer, I have to say that there are generally two types of urban planning. It's a city block type and a super block type of urban planning. So city block is a dense row of buildings along the street. We can meet this type everywhere around the world, like in Europe, America. I guess it's any city that was built before 20th century. Like San Francisco is a great example of such urban planning. And super block type, it's separately standing buildings, usually around some infrastructure unit and surrounded by big roads. And also there can be a lot of trees and stuff like that. So this type of urban planning was invented by modernist or brutalist architects in the first part of 20th century, and it was really popular after Second War. And also we can meet this type of urban planning everywhere around the world, like Europe, America, Asia, Africa, I believe, everywhere. But in my talk, I will focus only on city block type of urban planning, because I like it, because I believe that it's much better for human perception, although we can discuss it because, it's my topic, so if you have other thoughts, just, reach me out. But still, what will be said in this talk can be easily extrapolated to super block type of urban planning if this is something that you are interested in. Yeah, so now let's go to the main part. There are three basic types of city space. It's street, square, and backyard. In real cities, there can be more types, but those three take the biggest surface and present in every city. There are other examples of city space, like, for example, parks or any type of green areas. Also markets, maybe parkings, construction site, list is endless, you name it. And those different types of city space can be present in a game city optionally, but those three will be there for sure. So just to rephrase, these three types are the core of the city, but not the ultimate list of city space. And here is an example from real life. I don't think that I should comment a lot about this, so I guess you understand. So street, and of course, shape of those space can be different because, for example, here we have straight street, but of course, street can be also curved or just angled. Square also can be in the middle of intersection, like this example, but also it can be just a side on the side of certain street. The same goes for backyards. They can be bigger or smaller, different shapes, but still. And here's the main idea. If we imagine that we were teleported into a random city that we have never been before, so we have no idea where we are, we would immediately recognize the space around us. So if we are in the street, we would understand that, okay, it's a street. If we are in the middle of the square, it also would be absolutely clear for us that, yeah, it's a square. The same goes for backyard. And there is no chance that we would confuse, backyard with a street or square with street or backyard, whatever. So it's quite clear for us. And I believe that in games, it should work the same. So if the player was spawned randomly somewhere in our city, they should immediately understand where they are, just like that. And here is examples from Night City. So this is a street, and again, not much to add here. It's quite clear because we have direction, we have road, we have sidewalks, we have buildings on the left and right. So this is a street. This is an example of square, pretty much the main one, Corpo Plaza. And again, it's quite readable as a square. Like, we have no doubt what's that. And the backyard. And also, as you can see, well, I believe that it's really hard to confuse these three types of space. They are very distinctive. And I guess you would never confuse this backyard with the square, right? So now, when we know the main components of city, once again, it's streets, squares, and backyards, let's discuss how to actually make a city. And there are three basic parameters of the city. It's size, proportions, and level of detail. And I won't surprise you if I say that these three parameters are very much connected with gameplay. Obviously, because we're creating a city for game and not just abstract city. And to be more precise, these parameters are connected with type of movement, and particularly with speed of movement. And now I will talk about this more detailed. So first one is size. Size is the simplest parameter, so it's literally square meters or square kilometers or square feet, I guess, like it's popular here, right? So yeah. Also, at this stage, we should think about borders of our city and the shape of the city. Because maybe our city is located on a shoreline, or maybe it's surrounded by mountains, maybe it's in a valley, maybe it's, I don't know, like peninsula or something like that. So at this stage, we should kind of think about it. Of course, it is connected on gameplay and, like I said, speed of movement, because if in our city we're mostly driving a car, which means that our speed is quite big. So apparently we would need bigger city than if we're creating a city for mostly walking. Example, if we making a city, let's say, I don't know, 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, this like area, probably not entire city, for driving it would be super small, because it would take us like, how much, like 5 seconds to reach from one side to another. And if we're walking, area 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, it's quite okay for walking, and we can spend quite a lot of time, you know, exploring this area. So this is about size. And of course, this parameter would change during production. But it's really important to come up with, like, you know, basic numbers. So we just need to understand whether we're creating 5 by 5 kilometer or 50 by 50. So, you know, on this scale, it's not something that you're, you know, set in stone right away. The next parameter is proportions, and this is about lengths and widths of streets, sizes of city blocks, also size of streets. Yeah, I said it. And all the stuff which is, like, you know, inside the city. And it also depends on type of movement, because again, if we move fast, then apparently we would need longer streets, because it would be uncomfortable if we have to make a turn each, like, I don't know, 5 seconds. And if we're mostly walking, then we can make it like proportions could be smaller. And it would be still, you know, comfortable. And proportions most likely will be different in different parts of the city. But again, at this stage, we're coming up with some, you know, global idea. So, like, we just need to understand whether we're creating something big, like a huge city with, like, mega buildings, skyscrapers, like, I don't know, broad avenues and that kind of stuff, or we're creating small, I don't know, medieval town with narrow curved streets and, you know, tiny gingerbread houses. So again, on this scale, we should decide it at this stage. And finally, level of detail. Also depends on gameplay. Because if our game is about slow movement and exploration, most likely we should put, like, more details, and they should look kind of unique. And if we move fast, then there is no need in smallest details, and we should focus more on medium and big shapes. And in Night City, we actually have different examples, because, for example, on Top Shot, we have this area where we only driving, because it's hard to imagine why would player just go out and walk there, because there's nothing to do, nothing to explore. So here it was important to focus more on bigger shapes to create like nice composition, player guidance, etc. And bottom image, it's from Dogtown, and in Dogtown we actually walk a lot. We still can drive there, but we're also walking. And that's why it was reasonable to create more details, to make this area interesting for exploration. So I'm just trying to say that it doesn't work like as more detail you have, as better. No, the amount of detail should be reasonable. And to summarize this part, I would just say that the main thing that affects these three parameters, once again, size, proportions, and level of detail, it's gameplay and particular speed of movement. If we move mostly by car, we should have long enough streets and quite big city, and maybe not huge amount of details. And if we move on foot, the city might be smaller and, let's say, more compact, and with bigger amount of details. So, after we decided how big our city should be, what proportions we need there, and amount of details we're aiming for, we should think about visual diversity of the city. Because every city doesn't look evenly the same. There are always like different parts which look different. The best example, like usually we have city center, which look often like fancy, or not necessary actually, and outskirts, suburbs, which look differently. And speaking of these areas, I usually use term neighborhoods. And by neighborhood, I mean city area that shares same appearance, atmosphere, and other features, which I will talk about, of course. And Night City is actually a good example, of course, because we have a lot of different neighborhoods there. And if you play it, I guess you would never confuse, for example, Kabuki and Charter Hill. They look completely different. So to create this visual difference, we have three foundations. How is it built? First, it's layout, architecture, and landmarks. And now I will talk about all of these three things. So first one is layout. And yeah, to create a diverse environment, we should start with a different layout for each neighborhood. First of all, let's think about proportions. Yes, we already spoke about proportions for entire city, but like I said, it was like bigger scale. And now let's focus on proportions for each neighborhood. Because yeah, like I said, cities never built evenly the same, right? And we still can have neighborhoods with broad streets, skyscrapers, etc. And of course, we can have areas with smaller streets, smaller buildings, maybe even slums. And example from Night City. So on top shot we have Rancho Coronado, which has this small one-story buildings, and city center with these huge mega buildings. And when it comes to planning features, so again, looking at this slide, we can immediately see that on top shot in Rancho Coronado, it's like flat, quite spacious environment. And bottom image, we can see that it's very, packed with everything. It's multi-layered because we have different levels of streets and sidewalks. So this is about planning features. And and about patterns, let's have a look on next slides. So I just created this really fast schemes. And again, going back to this part when I created distinctive and readable environments using just cubes. When I was creating this, I was thinking about, average European city with like middle-sized, I would say, everything, like streets, buildings. And this is how players feel inside the space. And here we have pretty much similar pattern, but different size. And impression that we have here is, well, I guess quite different, because all space is much smaller. And once again, so this is how we feel there. And in a smaller area. And the third example, which looks completely different. So here we have different size, different pattern, and feeling that we have when we walk there, it's also like completely different. So this is something like, I don't know, like maybe like townhouses or something like that. I think quite common pattern for America. So that was about layout, and now architecture. We should define architectural features for each neighborhood, and we can start with architectural styles because, I don't know, I guess it's the simplest. In Night City, we have 4 main styles, and not only for architectural, but pretty much for everything. It's militarism, kitsch, neo-kitsch, and entropism. And here on the slide, you can see city center, which was built in this militarism style, and bottom image, which is built in entropism. The next one is colors. So each neighborhood can have its own color coding. And this top example is from Japantown, and it's very colorful, very kitschy. And the bottom image, it's more like business district, so it's gray, like colors are quite calm. And it creates this visual difference, of course. The next one is height. So we can have neighborhoods with high-rise buildings and some 1, 2, 3-story buildings. Also age. In Night City, of course, we don't have really ancient buildings, but still there is a difference in age because we can have something older, I don't know, I would say maybe like 90s, 2000s, and like really brand new, futuristic buildings, yeah. Also richness. So again, we have rich districts and we have super poor districts. Also condition. We can have districts with, which in very good condition, like this Charter Hill on the top image, and something that is in very bad condition, like Dogtown. So this is like half destroyed, dirty, etc. So this list is actually can be endless. Like I just give like a few examples, and it's not even all examples from Night City, but just something that just give an idea about that. Because for your project, maybe some of those examples would be irrelevant, and maybe you would need to come up with something else. But again, it's just an example. And the third thing, it's landmarks, because besides regular buildings, we should think about landmarks. And ideally, for each neighborhood, of course, we should have its own landmark. And this landmark would become something like a symbol of this neighborhood. And landmarks should look unique in comparison to other buildings. But also, at the same time, they kind of should belong to this neighborhood. So when we are there and when we see this landmark, we should kind of understand why is it there, what is this function, and like why it's there, basically. And of course, landmark should be visible. Otherwise, it makes no sense. And I would like to extend this topic about landmark a little bit more, because it's a really important thing. Besides local landmarks that I just mentioned for each neighborhood, we also should think about main landmark for the city. It can be one landmark or several of them, depends. So it's something that would become a symbol of our city. And in real life, like think about Eiffel Tower in Paris or Golden Gate in San Francisco. So basically something that you can see on a postcard or this fridge magnet. And in Night City, we have this advertising rays. They are big, they are very noticeable, and we can see them pretty much everywhere in the city. But also, when you're working on landmarks, it's very important to think about, to make them visually appealing both from distance and from close-up. And this is example, again, from Night City and about this advertising race. Because like I said, we see them and they are very appealing. And for example, this shot was taken like really far away from this ray. And like we want to go there. We want to see like how does it look, because it's really catchy. But when we reach this place, we actually see that it has no bottom. Like it's really even hard to understand that we already reached this place, that we're already there. Because this ray, it goes from the roof of the building, and there is nothing really distinctive in the bottom. The same works sometimes with some mega buildings. So those mega buildings, they work as local landmarks, and they also very visible from different points of view, and they are very eye-catchy. But when we come closer, it's again sometimes really hard to understand that we're already there. And this shot was taken directly under this mega building. So really, there is no signs that we're already there. But lesson was learned. And when landmarks for Dogtown were created, they were created in the way that it's like appealing, visual appealing both from distance and from close-up. So this example is this Black Sapphire Club, which is really visible from big distance. And when we come closer, there is no chance that we would miss it because it looks really unique and visually interesting from the close distance. The same goes for Stadium. It's also really noticeable from distance, especially when we are approaching Dogtown. And when we come closer, we can see it in all this beauty and glory. Because, from close-up, it also works great. OK. So we decided what is the size of our city and what its proportions. We also know how many neighborhoods we want to have and what kind of features would share those neighborhoods. And also we have a list of landmarks for our city. So finally, it's time to actually make a city. And of course, like any other design of pretty much everything, we should start with references. It's much easier if you're creating real existing city, because of course you can use a lot from real life maps and examples. And it's a bit harder if you're creating fictional city, but still I would recommend to stick to existing, existing layouts, existing examples from real cities. And I made this fast exercise. So I took this place from Vienna because, those shots are from Google Maps, but still I was there in this place. And I felt that it's really nice, like this small square, this irregular shape. It looks really, it was really comfortable to stay, to be there. Like I like the composition. So I took this and used our cyberpunk buildings. And as you can see, it's really hard to recognize Vienna or any European city on this shot. So it looks pretty much like cyberpunk. So my idea here is that you still can use existing layouts, like some parts of the city, even at first glance, even if they look irrelevant at first glance. Like they still could work if composition is nice and if you feel that it looks interesting. Also, when you're creating a city, think about alternation of narrow and small spaces and some open areas. Here, at this example, I made a square. It's right now. So yeah. So the guy runs, and then suddenly he comes to some square, and it makes this kind of difference. But also, it's not necessary it can be a square, like any type of open space. Like it can be maybe, I don't know, destroyed building, I don't know, parking, river, whatever. Also, in your city, there might be large streets. And when you create in large streets, they should never end up with some dead ends. And by dead ends, I also mean not only like literally dead end, but also like T intersection. It will not work. Like in real cities, usually bigger streets never just end up. They usually merged with other big streets and go just outside the city. But if you need to break the big street, just use a square. So you have a street, then it ends up with a square, and then it can be divided by smaller streets, and those smaller streets already can be interrupted by just dead ends. And also, I took this example from just random European cities, so sometimes it occurs in the real world as well. Speaking of larger streets, think about main street in your city. In smaller city, it can be maybe 1 or 2 main streets. In bigger city, there can be more. So this is something like arterias in your cities, which connects different part of the city, different neighborhoods. And it's really good to have some, because it creates like, well, first of all, it's something that would really simplify the navigation in your city, because once players reach the street, they would more or less understand where they are and where to go. Pretty much the same as in real world, because when you're in a bigger street, usually you kind of feel comfortable if you have to find the way. One more thing about landmarks. So when you're drawing streets, try to orient them towards landmarks. Bigger street can go towards main and bigger landmarks. Smaller street can go towards smaller landmarks. In this case, you would first create better navigation in your city, because when you have landmarks, something unique, so it's something that you would remember, something that you would immediately recognize, and like I said, it's easy to navigate. And also, it would give more visibility for your landmarks. Also think about visual diversity of streets, because we already spoke about visual diversity of neighborhoods, but also different streets in one neighborhood also could be different. And this example is from, again, Night City, just random streets, 2 streets in city center. So the left one looks quite rich and fancy with all those neon lights and everything. And the right one looks quite gloomy and basically the place when you easily can be stopped. So, but the thing is that like they both are in the same neighborhood. They're built with more or less same architecture, but they have completely different mood. And the same works with real city. This example was taken from, again, Google Maps. It's Pittsburgh. And here you can see on the left example, it's quite a big street with, again, with different buildings. And the right example, it's there, like it's like behind the corner. So again, it's the same neighborhood, the same architecture, the same, I don't know, property value, but atmosphere and vibes of those streets, they're completely different. And why is that so? Well, first of all, because of size, I mean, the width of the street. So of course, when you have narrow alleyway, it feels different. And also function, because on this left street, we can see different buildings. I don't know exactly what's that, but I think it's something like a shop. This yellow building might be a bank or something like that, also like office buildings. And this example on right shot, it's mostly residential areas and also just kind of back facades of buildings. And only this plus width of the street creates this difference. Also remember about elevation. Hills and descents can create very interesting composition and open unexpected vistas. And one more example from Night City, from Kabuki, basically. If we look on top of this neighborhood, we can see like streets and city blocks quite clear, quite simple, I would say. But this neighborhood was built on hills, and when we walk there, we have like a lot of this nice openings to entire city. Again, we can see this landmark from this area. So, and we have it because we have this hills and descents. This is how it works. Also, be careful with completely straight streets. Besides that, straight street can have often feels like monotonous in terms of movement. But also, it might bring some problems in future when it comes to optimization. Because if you look at this left example, you can see this super long streets with a lot of buildings. And of course, now it's only a cube, so it's not a lot of things there. But if we imagine that this is already like final shot, like final city, so we have all these buildings with some details. Also, we have probably street traffic, we have NPC, so a lot of details. And it would be quite hard to, to optimize this. And if we look at right example, so I made this small angle, and I cut the street like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times already. So we have much less details there. Well, I mean, of course, if we have to create a city with completely straight streets, for example, like most of American cities, they have straight streets, it would be trickier, but still it's possible to to work with it. And again, another great example from Dogtown. So here we had this Monument Avenue that goes almost straight. And actually, when you walk there or drive there, you feel it as a straight street. But it has this slight angle, like really almost not noticeable. But this angle already helped us to cut the view like almost twice. And yeah, when it was time to actually optimize this area, we were quite thankful for this small angle. And another one point about straight and curved street, and you might think that I am ambassador of curved streets, and yes, I am. I love curved streets. So on the left example, player moves very monotonously, evenly straight, just along the straight line, and I would say it's boring. And again, for this type of movement, because apparently if player moved by car or just 10 times faster, it would be okay to have this straight chunk. But particularly for this speed of movement, it feels really boring and very monotonous. And on the right example, player has to make a turn every few seconds, I don't know. And it also creates this difference because once we make a turn, we have completely different view, and it also creates this kind of diversity. So let's summarize. So city is a structure and rules, and not just buildings randomly scattered on a surface. There are 3 basic types of urban space. It's street, square, and backyard. There are 3 basic parameters of the city. Its size, proportions, and level of detail. And there are 3 foundations of visual diversity. Its layout, architecture, and landmarks. So urban planning for cities in games is the same as anatomy for characters. It's a base and powerful tool that helps to create great and high-quality urban environments. Thank you. And also, yeah, so also I have this small advertising shot. So this is another talks from my awesome colleagues. Please join them. I mean, some of them already were yesterday, but still there are plenty of those. Yeah, and also I have this corporate shot, this one. So if you want to work with us, we have new office in Boston, so scan the code, and yeah, we're hiring. Thank you. It was quite fast, so I guess we have quite some time for questions, so you're welcome.
Hi. I was wondering, how do you balance environments that are more enjoyable to traverse with walking versus a car? Do you balance it strictly off of how much access the player will have to the car? If there's a point in the game where they actually gain access to that, is that when you would introduce environments that are more car friendly? Just how would you balance those 2 modes of movement?
That's a great question, and I think it should be addressed to game designers. No, honestly, like I don't think that it's me who actually made this decision. I would say that, well, I mean, when I work in cities, I kind of make some assumptions, but I don't know, pretty much at the end it will be different because it's not me who makes this decision. So, you know.
Thank you.
Hi, I was wondering, you talked about different neighborhoods having different visual identities. I was wondering about how the intersections of those neighborhoods work, like how they blend into one another so you can move from one to the other seamlessly.
That's a great question. Thank you. Actually, it depends, and basically we can go like in two directions, or we can make this intersect. Well, not I guess not intersection, but border between those neighborhoods very contrast. So if player like moves there, they would immediately understand that they went something. You know, they went to different area, or it can be like really smooth. There will be no border, and this difference would be smooth. So, well, you know, the simplest way, I guess, to make to think about something like buffer area. So, for example, there will be, let's say, a few streets or city blocks that shares features of both neighborhoods, and that's how you would make this smooth. Transition. Or again, contrast also works great because, like, you know, for example, you can have this really nice and fancy neighborhood, and then you make a turn, and suddenly you are in like poor, really, you know, dangerous area. So it also might work. It depends on what, well, like, what's your intention, what you wanna, you know, bring to player.
Thank you.
Any thoughts on how a small team could make a big, interesting city, or is that just impossible?
Once again?
A small team making a big city?
Well, it will be challenging, I guess. I mean, of course, for example, maybe if you have 10 years or maybe a century, then...
Thank you.
I saw that on the presentation you had a picture of Vienna as a reference, but in grayscale. What was the purpose on that?
I mean, particularly on that slide, it was just an exercise, because I just wanted to take something that seems absolutely relevant to cyberpunk, because, come on, like, old city in Vienna and cyberpunk, it's something absolutely, you know, not connected to each other. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to show how we can use references, you know, because you know, something that would obviously come to your mind to actually check some, you know, this modern cities, yeah, but also you can go this way, and maybe you will find something fresh, something, you know, something different, something that was never used before. So only because of that. That example was quite random, to be honest.
Ah, okay, yeah, thank you, and thank you for sharing your knowledge. It was awesome.
Thank you.
I was just curious when working on a city, more so, I guess, a top-down city, when you're trying to spawn in enemies, what's a good way to do it without having it be like, oh, this is where the enemy spawns? How do you make it feel organic, or like, oh, they're now coming for you because you did something, or so forth?
Yeah, so one more question to quest designers, I guess, because I have no idea where to spawn enemies. Sorry.
Oh, good.
Hi, thank you so much. I guess like one question that I had was, obviously like urban planning and level design has a lot to do, like works very closely with like quests and systems and that kind of thing. And in my own experience, I've had a lot of times where the environment has shaped how we set up the quest, or vice versa. I guess I'm just wondering if you have any examples off the top of your head where you had a particularly challenging like moment where you were really trying to either bend the environment to the quest, or vice versa, doing something to make the like environment work for the design goals of the game.
Well, honestly, this work always goes in really close cooperation. So, I mean, I don't think there ever was any kind of conflict of interest or something, or if it was, we tried to deal with it in the very beginning. So, I mean, yeah, it's about teamwork and cooperation, I guess. And I don't think, I think maybe I'm telling like very boring things that everyone knows, but yeah, it's about cooperation and teamwork. Like if you work together from the very beginning, you know what gameplay needs you have, what quest needs you have. That's it. Like you just always keep it in your mind, and and use it in your layouts. So your layout would support all the gameplay needs. And yeah, this is essential. This is very important.
Thank you.
Hi. So I have a question in relation to multi-tiered cities. Like if you have regular street layouts, but imagine you have also flying cars and you have multiple layers of street level, if you will. So if you have a street, but it's taller, think sixth element, but maybe also some cyberpunk. So do you have any insight in city layout regarding that, or is that out of scope of cyberpunk?
Thank God we don't have flying cars. Well, I mean, no, it's kind of the same because, like, still, if this car moves along the street, because I believe this is what you mean, right? I mean, of course, if we can go just up to the sky to, I don't know, to stratosphere and just, wandering there on top, then I don't know, and, it's a little bit different, I guess. But still, like, if we move along the street, okay, yeah, it can be not a street level, but higher, but it makes no difference because still you are in the street. The street has direction. You still have some intersections, like you still, well, for example, you know that, I don't know, maybe you have a map, you know where you have to go, and that's it, you just move. And, it doesn't matter whether you move on the ground or above.
Yeah, I mean, there are tunnels and lower areas below buildings in the cyberpunk environment, as well as
sorry, could you please speak closer to the microphone?
Sorry,
Thank
there
you.
are multi-tier levels within cyberpunk, like the tunnels underneath the buildings and the bridges or buildings with bridges in between. So it's kind of the same, I guess.
Well, yeah, but again, like you can, of course, here I showed maybe like simpler examples because, just to bring my ideas, but you can make this structure even more complicated because again, so for example, you decided, okay, so this neighborhood or couple of neighborhoods will have this complicated multi-level structure. Like this is important to decide it at some point, and then you just start, making blockout. All
right, thank you.
Hello, great talk. I really appreciate your breakdown of the process and the abstraction of it. The person ahead of me actually kind of already asked my question, but I would like to, if you're okay with it, get further characterization on your communication with mission designers and game designers, like a timeline, or like, would you further characterize your interaction with other team members as far as placement of points of interest, ambient resources, things that promote player agency in the cityscape?
I guess the answer is yes. I mean, well, yeah, I always, if I understood the question correct, so yeah, I always taken this to account. And for example, I know that, okay, this is our point of interest. For example, this is landmark, and it should be something that should be visible. So yeah, it would affect my layout. For example, I would orient streets toward this place, these points of interest. Because yeah, like when you create a layout, it's really powerful tool, and you can make it really visible. You can make it in a way that it would immediately catch players' attention, and yeah, this is our work pretty much.
Yeah, I'm just interested in, would you characterize like some of the more successful communication team members, what that looks like?
Sorry, could you again closer to microphone?
Is this better? Oh, that's so
much better.
Oh, that is embarrassing. Okay. I'd be interested in hearing you characterize some of the communication processes between like mission designers and quest designers and your work as far as placement goes and a timeline or something like that, or whatever you come up with.
I mean, well, the communication process, well, it's good. I mean, the processes are built really great in our company, and all designers that I work with, they are my friends. And we often we have like brainstorms, and we discuss things together. It's not like I'm just sitting in my box drawing something and then just bring it to the table like, here I made it. No, it's not like that. We always like in touch, and we're creating things together. And even like, again, when it comes to city, it's not like, it's really hard to, it's not like hard, it's impossible to name a person who created a city, because it's not persons, like whole team, and we create this together.
Outstanding, thank you.
Hello. So while obviously Night City is a very big video game space, it's, I think, fair to say quite a bit smaller than an equivalent real-world city. And I guess I was wondering if you could speak a little more about how some of these techniques go to creating that sort of illusion of scale and making it feel closer to like an enormous sort of megacity real-world environment while being geometrically a lot smaller than, say, like a Los Angeles type environment. Thank you.
You see, it's all about perception, because it's like this example that I gave like in the very beginning. So if you have something, if you have to go somewhere for 15 minutes in real life, it's okay, it's super close. But if you have to walk for 15 minutes in game, you would just close this game and never open it again, right? So it's always like that. Like game proportions, they always smaller. It's okay. I cannot give you a certain formula, for example, like some coefficient that you should use when you create it, and pretty much it doesn't exist, because again, it depends on type of movement, because maybe in some cases you have to use proportions that would be quite close to real city, because, for example, if you move really fast, then like why not? But yeah, if you're mostly walking or walking/driving, you have to be smart about the sizes. And honestly, I don't know, like I would say that, yeah, again, there is no formula. It's only like empiric way that you can just, trials and failures. So, you just create, you can create like a few streets, walk there or drive there or fly or whatever you need. And just ask yourself, okay, is it comfortable? Do I like it? And that's it. And once the answer is yes, this is your proportions.
Wonderful, thank you.
Hello. I just wanted to ask, what's the design process to decide between having a playable or an interactive POI compared to like a bottomless POI? It sounds like if it's visible from every location, wouldn't it just push itself to be an area of more interest or interactive gameplay?
Damn, I don't think I understood the question. I'm sorry.
What's the difference between the design process to create something more interactive compared to a bottomless POI, kind of like what you showed on the slides?
Okay, so again, it's something that we decide together with, I don't know, lore team, game design team, and initiative on their side. So, I mean, I can suggest something, of course, but the final word, I guess, after them. And yeah, I guess it's really, again, it's really hard for me to answer, because I think they rule the process. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Yeah, thank you for the talk, first of all. You mentioned that it's often good to have streets lead to or highlight nearby landmarks, and based on your responses to some other questions, it seems pretty important in your design flow. How much are you or other level designers willing to bend or change the streets that you've made or the layout to frame landmarks? And in the event where that might not be possible just because of the layout of the city, is there like a second best option for a street to highlight or direct to?
Okay, so I think this situation won't be possible if, again, if you work together from the very beginning. I kind of have this feeling that some of you really want to force me that, yeah, we have fight. We actually go to a ring, we fight, and so someone who wins, this is how we make it. No, it's not the case. So yeah, we work together from the very beginning. We decide like, and again, it's very iterative process. So because I can provide, or okay, not like me, but my team maybe can provide some drafts. We can discuss it with level designers, with lore team, with quest designers, whoever is interested. And we have like this first approval, or maybe they suggest some things to maybe change something. We work on it, then we meet again, and and this is like really long process from the very beginning till the very end, I guess. And I think this is not a case where, for example, we are closer to the end, and then suddenly level designers or, I don't know, quest designers thought that, hey, it's completely not something that we expected. No, it's impossible.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. When designing environments, we have to balance the familiar and the new. Since we can only do so much weird, innovative, and unique stuff with cities before the player gets confused, how do you determine what to spend effort on making new and unfamiliar, and what to just keep basic, normal, boring city?
That's a tricky question. I'm confused, to be honest, because I don't think that I understood the question. I'm sorry.
I guess the question of, I mean, it's the 80-20 rule. You do 80% is familiar to the player, and 20% is like new and different. So when building a futuristic cyberpunk city, how do you determine what to make familiar that anyone can understand, and how do you determine, okay, this is worth putting energy making new, exciting, and something no one's seen before?
Okay, that's interesting. I don't know. I think it's intuitive process. I think because I don't think that okay, I don't have any guidelines. I don't have any formula that I don't know that every 100 meters we should have something unexpected. No. So and you see, this process, like I said, it's a very iterative process. And again, we started with very drafts, and we try to to walk around our cities, and yeah, and if it at some point if we feel that okay it feels boring, then let's kind of change it. And if it's not, then let's move forward. So I don't know. I would say for me, when I create in some city layouts, I have this kind of approach in my mind that I imagine myself as a tourist that, just wandering around, because at these various stages, we don't have any gameplay, we have nothing maybe, and there's no activities at these very early stages. So I just imagine that I'm a tourist. I just came in the city, I just wandering around, making pictures. So you should answer yourself, okay, would you make a picture of this? Would you post it into your, I don't know, Instagram? If yes, then you're good.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I just had a quick question about when you're designing a city and you don't have access to visual landmarks, so when you're designing back alleys and things like that, what kind of strategies do you have to give a visual dialogue to the player of hey, this is a good direction to get to a main point, or this is where you would move to kind of, here's your flow area towards your quest without just using quest markers and stuff like that. The thing that comes to mind is V's apartment at the very beginning of the game. It's kind of a complex space to navigate. I just was curious what strategies you have for allowing the player to navigate that without too much confusion.
So, okay, I need to think how to answer it best to not, repeat myself. So again, like I said, we work all together, and I can maybe make some suggestions. For example, I can say, okay, so here we have this landmark, and there are multiple streets that goes there. And then we just check if it works or not. If it's visible, if it's fit the quest. So again, yeah, you ask about strategies. No, I guess there are none. It's not about strategies. It's about trials and failures, I would say. And again, maybe what also matters is that, that kind of visual gallery that I already have in my head, because I have a lot of examples. So I can, for example, I know if I think about some situation, I can think, okay, I think I saw something like that in certain city that might work in our game. And then, for example, I can try to make fast draft of this layout and check if it works. Because again, I don't think that I creating this, just from my head. I actually try to use some existing things because, we have everything in real life. We can just use it, just take it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I think maybe one last question, and we can just continue somewhere outside.
All right. I have a question. You didn't mention anything about public transportation in urban planning, and I was thinking there is a metro system in Night City, as far as I remember. How does that affect sort of the layout and the...
Should I maybe send you to our PR department? I mean,
What?
That's a good one, yeah. So I mean, no, seriously, like I don't know, like you know that metro it appears like in the very last patches. So you know, in the very early stages, I guess it didn't affect much. That's it, I guess. Thank you.
No worries.